So, good evening, everyone. I want to welcome you to the TNPS Zoom seminar. I will be your host this evening. I want to make a quick statement about our weather. As you might have heard in our recent conversation, we're experiencing a strong weather system here in Middle Tennessee, extending into East Tennessee at this time. So we want to proceed as planned if at all possible. However, severe weather could cause issues such as power fluctuations. Of course, at that time, we would lose internet and we might not be able to continue. So if that happens, we will attempt to reschedule this presentation for another time, but we're going to go as far as we can. And thank you all for your patience with the unusual situation we're in. We are pleased to have as our speaker tonight, Rosanna Ohlsson. Rosanna is a native of Tennessee and currently resides here. Her experience includes working as a naturalist in Louisiana and a contract biologist in Texas. She's the author of various articles published in the Tennessee Conservationist magazine and others. I'm pleased to report she's also a member of TNPS. So tonight, Rosanna's presentation is entitled Collecting and Saving Seeds from Native Plants. I will be driving the slides from my end, and she will be narrating the slides. So with that, Rosanna, welcome, and I will turn it over to you.
Okay, thanks a lot, Mitchell. First, we'll just have a little simple introduction about seeds. For centuries, humans have collected and saved seeds to grow plants for medicine, ceremony, and food. And it's become a tradition that has become so popular, especially in the garden trade, that nonprofit seed banks have been created to preserve heirloom plant varieties through seed exchanges. And also heirloom garden seeds, they protect the genetic diversity of food crops and gardens for future generations. But now it's really cool that, and for a while now, that we're on the ball saving seeds from native plants. So collecting and saving seeds from native plants, it's a crucial step in preserving biodiversity and also local ecotypes, allowing for habitat restoration and supporting local flora, fauna, the pollinators that are so important to us. Okay, Mitchell. Next.
Let's make sure we can do that.
I hope so.
There we go.
Okay, great. Okay, I love this picture. It's seeds as seen under an electron microscope. And the study of seeds is called spermology. And I've got just a little quote here. I don't know if you all are familiar with the book by Zoe Schlanger called The Light Eaters, but this is a quote from her book that I really like. A seed scientist once described them to me as a plant in a box with its lunch. The blueprint for the whole plant is there, dormant but alive the whole time. A seed might blow around for a decade, waiting patiently for the right conditions to poke out a first root. Once it sends out this first root, it has given up any chance of movement. Immobilized, it will now face whatever threat comes, wind, snow, drought, animal mouths, right from where it stands. So, plants are just very vulnerable because they really can't move anywhere except for by seeds. Okay, next. To me, seeds are fascinating. This is of the common storksbill, which is an introduced weedy species that you all may be familiar with, Erodium circutarium. And what is so fascinating about it is that the seeds of this literally plant itself. When humidity is involved, they will straighten out and coil up. So they completely are responsible for planting themselves down into the soil. Seed biology, it's a fascinating subject, and they're just, I don't know, they're just so cool. Okay, next. And this is a photo on of a couple of seed banks. On the left is the seed bank from Kew Botanical Gardens inside, and it's known as the Millennium Seed Bank, and it is flood, bomb, radiation proof. And probably as of today, there's probably close to 40,000 different species stored there of the world's wild plants. I had worked collecting a lot of those plants. I don't know, well over, I don't know, probably about 160 different species on the eastern part of from northeast Texas all the way down to southeast Texas. And so a lot of the collections that I made are stored there. The seeds there stay at about minus 20 degrees Celsius, which is minus 4 degrees centigrade, and at about 15 to 25% humidity. So, you know, this ensures that if there's something catastrophic that happens, some sort of apocalyptic event, which we hope never happens, that there are seeds there that will remain viable because they're stored properly, that can be used for restoration purposes. And then on the right side, you'll see a picture of the Svalbard Global Seed Bank. And this is in Norway, and it actually is responsible for safeguarding crop species so we can maintain diversity in that for food. So these are two different types of seed banks. And also, I don't want to, you know, leave this out, is that there's many other seed banks for native plants. The Ladybird Johnson Wildflower Center in Texas, which some of the ones I collected are also there. And then in Tennessee, we have the one at Austin Peay known as the Southeastern Grasslands Institute. They have also got a seed bank there. And then there's the Mid-Atlantic Regional Seed Bank, which is, I think it's up in New York, which is really an important one that saves a lot of native species. And along with that, there's botanical gardens and other universities. The Bureau of Land Management also has a really good seed bank that stores native seeds for restoration purposes. And so they're really, really very important to us. Okay, the next one. And these are, you know, they're a few of my favorite species, wild species, which is Microcephala, Liatris microcephala, which is a really beautiful liatris, and the bottle brush grass, and also Penstemon calicosus. I can't remember the common name of it, but native plants are, you know, they're just really, really important to us because they support local flora and fauna. And they require fewer resources. And for that reason, they're really nice for us to use in our landscape. They enhance biodiversity because by gardening with native plants, we basically turn our home landscapes into a repository of native plant genetics. Okay. The next. And these are just, you know, more that are really nice. They're you can't say enough about native plants. I know I'm speaking to the choir here, but they're cost effective. It's cost effective to collect seed from native plants because purchasing native plants, you know, from nurseries, as you all probably know, it's just really costly. And also collecting seeds locally where you live. They're better. The plants that you grow that are collected locally, they have adapted better to the area. They're adapted to local conditions. And so that's a really good thing. And of course, you get a lot of personal satisfaction from growing seeds from some of the plants that you've collected from. Okay, next. So we're going to talk about just a few of these things, what to collect, where to collect, when to collect, how to collect, seed preparation, planting, and storage. Okay, next. So what to collect? We can collect native seeds, native fruits in the form of seeds, pomes, berries, drupes, and nuts. And you can even collect spores from ferns, if you can believe that. One thing you want to do is research the plants that are suited for your local area, for your local climate, your local, your soil. And you want to consider site factors as well, as far as like whatever you're going to collect to plant in your landscape. What type of soil you have, how much sunlight you get, and drainage, and also how large what you're going to plant is going to get, whether it's a tree or a shrub, because one of the big mistakes we make is we tend to plant things that grow too large in a place that's too small that it will outgrow. So we need to think about the size that it's going to be at maturity so they don't outgrow their space. You want to start really thinking about collecting plants from or seeds from easy to grow species like the Rudbeckias and Echinaceas and Asclepias, the milkweeds, because they all are easy to collect and easier to start from seed. And kind of in order to know like what grows in your area, the UT Herbarium site is a really good resource because you can search by county and look in your county and see what has been collected in your county as far as plants, and that gives you a good idea like what might be suitable for your site or for where you live. And then also BONAP, the Biota of North America program, where you can search the genera and see the counties in the state which a particular species grows. So it's a good place to start as far as what's adapted to growing in your area. Okay, next. And what not to collect, which this is really, really important. You don't ever want to collect seeds from anything that's rare or endangered. You only want to collect from plants that you find growing abundantly in a given location to ensure you don't eradicate an isolated population. And it's also illegal to collect anything that's rare, endangered, vulnerable, or threatened. So you do want to check the Tennessee Rare Plant List that is kept by the Natural Heritage folks with the state, to check a plant status to see where it is, whether it's endangered, threatened, vulnerable. My ethics personally, and speaking, is I love spring ephemerals, but and I can't wait to see them every year. Spring, I think for a lot of us to get out and see them is just, after winter, it's a real pleasure. But I have found that they are usually in very sensitive areas, and I have watched over a period of time populations shrink in areas that I used to visit just to observe them, and maybe you all have as well. And this really especially seemed to have started when COVID hit, because so many people were going outside, which is, I guess good for humans. But these areas kept getting visited and visited and visited, and it really a lot of these ephemerals got trampled, and it really seems like it hasn't let up much. So it's, like I said, it's good for people to get outside, but it's not so good for sensitive habitats. And I just think that spring ephemerals are especially vulnerable. So I never collect seed from them, and just, leave that to Mother Nature. And also they tend to have their seeds have a very complex dormancy. And we'll talk about that in just a little bit. And I don't even purchase the seed, because the seed from spring ephemerals, if they get very, very dry, the germination rate is very, very low. And they also have a very special way of being dispersed, which is by ants. And you all have probably heard of this. They have a little, on the seeds, a lot of spring ephemerals have a little a little fatty part, which is called an lyosome. And its main purpose is to attract ants. And the ants remove that lyosome, take it down into their lair and use it, and therefore plant the seeds. So in my opinion, it's like let the ants collect and take care of those seeds. So, okay, next. And here are a few of our spring ephemerals that are typically dispersed by ants, which of course the painted trillium, jack in the pulpit, trout lilies, hepaticum, and also dicentra, the Dutchman's breeches. And next. And then a few of our other ones, which are, bloodroot, Virginia bluebells, the southern trillium, and twin leaf. Next. And this is especially disturbing, is that never collect seed from orchids. And one reason is that, and I did make collections from orchids that I was told to make collections from for conservation. There were several that I collected. But it's really interesting because when you look at them, the seed first off, they're very, very tiny. It's like a grain of pollen, but they look like, an empty sac. When you look at them underneath a microscope, they have no endosperm in them. And so you wonder, it just looks, you wonder how in the world that can even make it. And so when orchid seeds disperse, they have to immediately come in contact with the soil and with the mycorrhiza of that soil. So it's just very, very specific. And unfortunately, I know that orchid collecting is a big, big issue. And of course, orchids just, put that on your do not list. Okay, next. Okay, where to collect? This is really a hard thing. You want to be sure wherever you collect that you ask permission from landowners if you're collecting on private property. And also, if you see areas about to be destroyed by development, that's an excellent site to explore, but be sure you get permission from the developer or the owner. And waste areas such as empty lots are good places to begin, as well as if you've got friends with property, or even if you've got a lot of property on your own place. And one thing I'd really like to mention are railroad right-of-ways. They're really interesting places just to botanize and also to collect seeds as well, because trains inadvertently transport seeds, and they transport them from other places. So you never know what you're going to find. And they plant fragments along the tracks and facilitate the spread of species. A lot of times they're invasive species, but a lot of times they're very interesting native species that are even from other states. I have found some species along tracks in Texas that hadn't been found in Texas before. So you never know what you're gonna find there. So that's a good place to explore. Okay, next. And I forgot to mention this. Where you don't want to collect is public or protected lands, such as scientific or natural areas, federal or state land, unless you have a permit. And also plants that are endangered of becoming destroyed due to development, those could be candidates for conservation as far as the plants themselves. You might want to inquire if you see a plant population that's about to get wiped out. I used to ride a road in Marshall County on my bicycle on a route I did quite frequently, and there was about 100 feet of Astragalus tennesseeensis. And every spring, I just looked so forward to my bike ride by there. And I went by and saw some pipe laying around. And I thought, wow, something's going on near this population. And I just sort of wrote it off. And then I went by about a month later, and they had put in a water line, and it was gone. It's gone forever. That population is no longer there. And so it's just really sad. But as far as when to collect, the best time to collect seed is at natural dispersal, as close as you can get to natural dispersal, when the seed is ready to come out on its own. Floral keys are really good tools because a lot of them have, the phenology, like when the plant blooms, and, also the areas, the type of habitat and ecosystems where they can be found. But the thing you've got to remember is it's always weather dependent. Seed maturity, it really varies, even within the same population and even on the same plant. And changing climate, I have found, just makes it not so accurate anymore. It's making it a little bit more difficult to predict. But plants will, start to show signs of decline, because they're going into senescence. They show signs of dying back. And you'll see the seeds become dry and hard, and they'll change color. And the fruits will change color, either from green to purple or to red. And they'll become softer. The fleshy fruits will, just depending on the species. Also, something to think about too is in drought years, like last year, I was watching for some fruit it was actually on a spice bush, Lindera benzoin. There was a female shrub that I had been watching. There were several along an area that I was watching on a roadside where there was a really good population, and they were all females because they're dioecious. But they dropped all their fruit before they even ripened because they were under so much stress of drought. So a lot of times that's kind of what a plant will do to survive, is it'll drop its fruit, because producing fruit takes a lot of energy, whether it's seeds or fleshy fruit. Okay. And we'll look at a few seed heads of different plants, and probably one of the easiest ones to collect are anything in the Asteraceae family. And of course, Liatris, I love. They're one of my favorite genera, and there are about 6 or 7 species that grow in Tennessee, in the state. And they're interesting because they're different than most flowers because of their blooming sequence, which you probably all know this. They bloom from the top down. So, and the oldest flowers are on top. And of course, that's different from most plants that bloom from the bottom up. But as asters start to mature, the seed starts to get ready to pick, they'll fluff out, like a dandelion. And in that, you'll know that, dispersal time is getting close. So when they fluff out like that, have a really good look at them, because they may be ready to collect. Okay. And like with fleshy fruits, this is the Crataegus. That's on the left is Cruscale. I guess it's cockspur hawthorn, and then on the right is Crataegus marshallii, parsley hawthorn. And the one on the right, you can tell, is absolutely ripe and ready to collect. The one on the left, of course, is green and not. And normally, you won't see them turn red all at once. Sometimes, there'll be some that are red and green. Sometimes they'll be kind of yellowish. So you might have to make several trips out to the same, population in order to collect the right fruit. Okay. Okay, and this is Forestiera Ligostrina, which is the upland swamp privet. And you can tell by the picture on the left that you've got some green fruits and you've got some purple fruits. And of course, the purple fruits are the ones that are ready to collect and the green ones aren't. And so that's kind of what I mean, that, you know, you've got to go back and maybe make several trips to the same population. Okay, next. And this is the nodding onion, Allium cernurus. I never can say it. Cernuum. And this one's really hard to collect. I found a real large population of it. And one thing I don't think I mentioned that I do want to make clear is that you want your population to be strong that you collect from, no matter what you're collecting. And typically, you only will collect 10% of the seed of that population. So you could look at it like you could collect the seed from one plant out of every 10, or just 10% off of each plant, because you want to be sure you leave enough to keep that population going, because that's part of conservation. But with this particular seed head, with this allium, they're really difficult because, you know, they nod and the seeds just kind of fall out of those capsules. So the way that you would collect these is to like put a little container under the head and then just kind of tap and the seeds will fall into the container. So that's, you know, that's the best way to do it. Okay. And with grasses, this is one of my favorite grasses, and probably of yours as well. It's Sorghastrum nutans, Indian grass. And you can tell that on the left, the grass is in flower. And then in the middle, it's still green. And then when it starts to ripen, it turns this bronzy color and it gets a little bit more fluffier. And you can tell that it is getting ripe. And what I'll do with this grass is I'll go and pull a couple of caryopsis off, which are the fruits of the grass, and kind of test them with my fingernail. I've even bit into them before. And if they're milky inside, you know that they're not ready yet. But normally color is a really good indicator with the grasses. And the easiest way to collect them is to strip them off with your fingers, or you can cut those the spikelets off, the spikes off, and put them in a bag. You can do them that way and strip them off later. Okay. And so, how to collect? Well, once you find your target species and you found a really good strong population, you want to assess it and go, yeah, it's strong. I could collect 10% of this and not hurt this population any. And if you collect from small populations, you just further weaken them. So you want to also determine if the species you're collecting from, if it's an annual, because it'll only produce seed once in its lifetime, or if it's a biennial, which it'll produce seed twice in its lifetime, or if it's a perennial, which it can be harvested more often. So a lot of that you want to take into consideration as far as what you're collecting, and also whether it is one of those three types of plants. And of course, large populations, the good thing about collecting from large populations is that they have better genetic diversity and they contribute better to survivability. And what you want to do too is you want to mark the population with like flagging tape or a little flagging survey flag. And so you can go and you can locate it later. I'm sorry about that. Probably somebody asking about what's happening with the weather over here. But You want to also be prepared for disappointment, because a lot of times, due to herbivory, other animals eating it, deer browsing it, your population and the seeds that you were hoping to collect are gone, or there might be the county mowers that come by, or there might be somebody who has sprayed with herbicide or something. So just be prepared to be disappointed. Of course, all your collecting is going to be done by hand. And I have found that the best thing to collect seed in is cloth bags, because they're breathable. And that is really important. Okay. And seed preparation, this gets pretty complex. And it's good, if you want to, there's lots to read about it on the internet. But each species of each plant species, it's got its own requirements as far as germination. And out in nature, it takes care of itself. But when we're trying to do it in a controlled environment, it poses some problems. So you'll have to take care of some of these things yourself if you want to try to do them in a greenhouse or in your house. So you've got to consider things like seed coat dormancy. And as you can see in this picture, in order to get some things to germinate, there has to be water that enters the seed, and that has to be done through scarifying the seed. And you can do it with sandpaper or nicking it with sometimes I've used fingernail clippers. It just depends, on what you've got available. You can nick it with a knife. Sometimes if it's super hard, like with some of the legumes, you can use sulfuric acid. I've heard hydrochloric or not hydrogen peroxide works. I've never used that before. Typically, I will just nick it. But the seed is dormant because it needs to imbibe water in order to trigger that seed to germinate. So there's that you have to do. You also sometimes just hot water will help overcome seed coat dormancy, and then of course with some seeds like astragalus, hot water is detrimental to it. So you want to do some studying on the different types of preparation, and I've got some resources that I can give you at the end that show that. And there's also in some seeds there's embryo dormancy, and most embryo dormancy can be overcome by stratifying, by chilling, which is when you put the seed in a refrigerator with some peat moss or with some sphagnum moss, and chill it for a certain amount of time. And usually in this part of the country, 60 days in a refrigerator will do it, from like 35, 36 degrees to 41 degrees, something like that. That'll help it. So you want to use a moist medium, and you want to do it in the refrigerator and not the freezer. Okay, next. And planting. Okay, this is, I have kind of changed my tune on the way I look at this anymore. After you deal with the seed coat dormancy, of course, you want to plant your seeds. And many seeds are sensitive to light. And if you subject them to light, some of them will not germinate. And then some of them will only germinate if they're subjected to dark. And so a few of these that will do better in the dark when you plant them will be like phacelias, alliums, but then I think lilies as well. A lot of them in the Liliaceae family are that way. But then you have seeds that need light. And these seeds are usually, and what I have found, and this is just from experience, are very, very, very tiny. And you don't, when you plant them, when you sow them, you don't cover them with soil. You just pat them in the medium. And those are tiny seeds like the hypericums, lobelias, penstemons, the pycnanthemums, the mountain mints, and monardas. They need light in order to germinate. So I'll just like pat them into the soil. Mostly it's common sense. If it's a tiny seed, I just always figure like, yeah, it's a tiny seed. It's going to need light, and I'm just not going to cover it with soil. So you always want to really think about the planting depth. And you also want to think about the planting medium. I tend to use coconut core, which is like ground coconut shells. I like peat moss, but then when you think about peat moss, that's, plant material that's millions of years old, right? And it's not really a renewable resource. So, but I do use it some, probably like a lot of you do too. It's really good that it inhibits growth of bacteria, but coconut core does a pretty good job to plant things in. Okay, next. And this is kind of the way that I have kind of gone, is just let nature do the work for you. You don't have to fool with doing seeds inside. I still, with tiny seeds, I will tend to start those indoors, and I'll start them in the spring. But the other seeds, I feel like really the best way is just to let nature do it. And I will do it outside. You can use, you can recycle your pots. You can also recycle little, like blueberry boxes, the plastic boxes that blueberries and strawberries come in, because they even have drainage holes, and they're just like little greenhouses. But just sow your seeds in them in your medium and put them outside, like you can see in this slide. Protect them with hardware cloth where rodents can't go into them, like squirrels. I have a lot of squirrels around here that want to dig everything up. So they can't get in them, and they can't, do it to where rodents can't get underneath them. And, it makes you kind of worry about them, because here in the South, we get, we get freezes, we get thaws, we get freezes, we get thaws, but the plants know what to do. The seeds know what to do. And that freezing and thawing and freezing and thawing, it helps break up that seed coat. And it does a much better job than when you put it in your refrigerator. So this is the way that I really advocate to do it. And even if you have it germinate, don't worry about it. I mean, things seem to just take care of themselves, and you'll get a pretty good germination rate doing it this way. Okay. And seed storage. To me, when you store seed, you want to make sure that it's clean. I typically only keep seed for a year. I don't keep it for any longer than that. I don't store it in the freezer. I have friends that say they store their vegetable seed in the freezer, and they do good with that. But native seed, I tend to just store it in little coin envelopes or little paper bags like you see in this photo. I've also used glycine envelopes, and that seems to work fine. I think when you collect native seed, you really need to use it within a year. And I know that too, you can store it in the refrigerator, but you need to be sure that the seed is dry. And you also, need to potentially, be sure you keep it from freezing. And yeah, so hear it storming out there. Next. And there's two things, there's a couple of different types of seed we just need to talk about really quick. A couple of terms I'm sure you all have probably heard are recalcitrant seed. These are recalcitrant seeds. These are seeds that you cannot store, which of course are fleshy seeds like nut seeds that cannot be dried and stored. They have to be planted pretty much immediately. They can't be stored conventionally because they can't be dried or frozen. So, even in these, really good seed banks like, Kew Botanical Gardens and, these just aren't storable. So that's just the way it is. So these typically you plant once you find them. Okay, next. And orthodox seeds, they're desiccant. They can be desiccated. They're tolerant of that. They can be dried to a moisture content of about 10% or less and stored at sub-freezing temperatures. So, and most of our seeds, that we have, our native seeds are like that, which is good. Okay. And I'm just going to go through this really quickly because these are just some of the ones that I would suggest that are easy to do, easy to look for. Populations are, look for strong populations, like I mentioned, and have a good time doing it. With the grasses, the Indian grass, Sargassum nutans, of course. The picture on the far right, it shows what the seed looks like when it's ripe, when it's ready to pick. Next. And this is a really beautiful grass, sugarcane plume grass, Saccharum giganteum. Sometimes if you look at it from a distance, it'll look like cattails, in the fall. And go have a closer look because a lot of times it's the sugarcane plume grass. And on the far left, you can see that it's just the flowering spikelet is there. In the middle photograph, it's showing that it's, spreading out, but it's still not ready to collect. And then on the far right, you can see that it's ready to collect. And one place that you see it that I notice it a lot is under power lines. And especially on ridges. So look at it there. You'll see. That's a good place to look for them. Next. This is one of my favorite grasses, bottlebrush grass, Elaemus hystrix. It's a beautiful grass for woodland areas in your yard. It's prickly, so you might want to use gloves to collect it. You'll find it a lot in woodland areas. I've seen it a lot on large populations on the sides of the roads. And of course, on the left side, you'll see that it's still green. And on the right side, it starts to turn lighter. And it comes off the stem pretty easy. Next. And of course, the blue stems, they're beautiful. Little blue stem is a beautiful grass. You can see that it's got that really pretty, the blades are really beautiful and blue on the left, and it's not ready. And then on the right is you're getting into the end of summer, into fall. This is how it'll appear. And you can just strip those heads off, the spikes off. And I know this is everybody's favorite, the Casmantium latifolium. This is a beautiful woodland grass that you see quite often, and it comes in very large populations. That is really beautiful to grow, and is so tolerant of shade and wet areas where a lot of things don't grow. And another thing to consider too are our sedges. There's a lot of sedges that are beautiful that do really well in the dry as well. Next. And this is absolutely, I think, an overlooked grass. It's one of my favorites. It's the two-flowered millet grass, Malika mutica. It's a beautiful little grass. When the sun is behind it, the way the seed heads hang, you'll see it a lot at the edges of woodlands, and you'll see it grows. I've seen it all over not as much. I see it more in the Central Basin, but I also see it a lot on the Highland Rim too. Next. And this one, I don't know if you all have seen this one. I've never seen it in Middle Tennessee. It does grow in Tennessee, and it probably grows mostly in the upper west, the Gulf Coastal Plain, upper west Gulf Coastal Plain. It grew in Texas a lot, which is split-beard blue stem, and it is just an absolutely beautiful grass and grew in abundance there, and it's just gorgeous in the landscape. Next. Okay, and with wildflowers, you know, the liatris, the asteraceae, you know, we've talked about those. You can see in the upper right-hand corner where you've got the little, you know, where the flowers were, they're dry and they haven't puffed out yet, but they'll, like I said, they will puff out when they're ready to collect. Next. And this grows a lot around me in waste lot areas, which is the southern prairie aster. And you can see in the middle photograph where it's ready to collect, and then what the seed looked like to the right. Next. And the goldenrods, the wreath goldenrod is on the left, and the bicolor goldenrod is in the middle. And at the bottom right, you can see where the seeds get all fuzzy and are ready to collect. And that's a golden flagall, which they're great. And then the monardas, you know, the flower, and then the seed heads, and then the seed is on the right. And next. And then, of course, the milkweeds, you can see on the far right where it has split open and it's ready to let the wind carry it off. That is the best time to collect it. And of course, the middle is unripe. Next. And some more milkweeds that we have in abundance around here that are fun to collect the seed from. And next. And of course, the red columbines, and they're easy to collect because you don't even have to remove the capsule. You can just kind of take the stem and dump it upside down into a little container. Next. And then these are the ones that are harder to get to germinate because of the hard seed coat, because they're legumes, which is the Baptisias, and this is the Baptisia australis, the blue false indigo, and you can see the flower, of course, and then when it's ready, which is in the middle, and then that's the seed with the legumes inside that are ready to be scarified and planted outdoors and let nature do all that. Next. And this is one of my favorites, is Tephrosia virginiana. It's got just beautiful flowers, and sometimes you'll find them, you know, in abundance, and they're just gorgeous. And the seeds are on the next slide that you can see how they do. They kind of distort and they curl and pop out. So they're one of those, if it's really, really dry, happens to be a dry day and they're ready and you want to collect them and you touch them, sometimes those seed pods will twist and they'll just spray everywhere. So it's better to try to collect those seeds when there's a lot of humidity in the air, like in a moist morning when the dew's still on. Next. And this is one of my favorites, and they're really easy to germinate. They're really easy to collect, is Lobelia cardinalis. I think it's that way probably for most of all the lobelias. You know, they're hummingbird magnets. Hummingbirds are the main pollinators. Apparently, several of the butterflies that even get on them don't have a proboscis that's long enough to pollinate them, but that they can reach the nectar. And I'm not quite sure I was reading about that, and I'm not quite sure about that. if I agree with that. But I do see an awful lot of hummingbirds on mine, and the seed is really easy to collect, and it doesn't require any sort of stratification, scarification. You just, dust the top of the soil with it, pat it in, and I got like 100% germination off of it. So, and even just went around and dispersed it in the ditches behind my house. But it's a wonderful native. Next. And here are a few of the more of the recalcitrant seeds that you cannot store, that you want to plant immediately. And on the left is beech, American beech. And on the top is dwarf chestnut, and at the bottom is American hazelnut. And when you collect those, you would just want to go ahead and plant them. Next. And of course, the oaks fall in that category as recalcitrant seeds, recalcitrant fruit as well. I did a walk over on a friend's place up on the Cumberland Plateau. And of course, there's chestnut oaks all up on the Cumberland Plateau. And I was just finding acorns all over the ground, and the radicals were coming out everywhere. And this was this past spring. And so, if you wanted to, and you had, nothing else better to do, you could pick up all these and plant them, and you'd have oaks everywhere in no time at all, because they were already, primed and ready to go. Next. And some of the ones that you have to think about that you're going to have to put through both to scarify and to stratify are seeds with stony fruits, which include the black cherries. And next. And also dogwoods. They have very stony seeds. Next. And something that you have to take into consideration, of course, are these fruits, which the top is red mulberry, Morus rubra. In fact, I've been eating some of those lately, and they're so good. And then the very top is Ilex decidua. I guess it's possum haw. And then to the right on the upper part is sassafras, which they're not, you can tell they're ripening, and then right below that, where you can see the pedicel and the dark fruit wrinkling up, those are ready to collect. That's sassafras. And then the bottom, of course, is Juniperus virginiana, which is eastern red cedar. And then to the left, the bottom left, that is black gum. And the thing that happens when you collect these and you grow them, you get this plant, if you're lucky to get them to germinate, but they're dioecious. So you don't know whether the plant you have is going to be a male or a female. So you can either just chance that, or you could go to a nurseryman who maybe knows what his stock is, because he has taken clones from females. And then, of course, it takes a male, not too terribly far away, to be able to pollinate that female and produce the fruit. But they're such wonderful wildlife trees, and if you could incorporate these in your landscape, it would be wonderful. And they're fun to grow. I mean, even if you get, a male. Okay, next. And these we'll just go through really quick. They're ballistic dispersal, and of course with witch hazel, they can shoot out at 30 feet a second. You can look at it on YouTube. It's really cool. Good luck collecting those. I've never had any luck. So next. And jewelweed, the touch me nots, when the seed's ready on those, you touch them and bing, they're gone. Next. And the violets, they have these little canoe shaped, partitions. And what they do is they shrink at either sides of the keel, kind of like a canoe, the keel of a canoe, and it forces those seeds to pop out. So they're hard to collect. And on those, what I've done, I mean, what you can do, and I've done it, but not had lots of luck with some of them, is you can put little cloth bags over the seed heads before they start to disperse. And sometimes you can be lucky and catch some of them. So next. And this is something I'm interested in doing that I haven't done before, is collect fern spores, because these can be done and you don't even have to remove, you know, any part of the plant at all. You can remove a frond if you want to, and fold it into a piece of paper, like an envelope, make an envelope out, you know, do some origami, and it will catch the right spores of the fern. And we'll look at the next slide, and you can see how this was done. And I've got some information in the resources where you can check this out, because this would be a really cool project. They make some really neat spore prints like mushrooms, and you have to keep things pretty clean. They talk about that a lot in growing and growing ferns from spores. But you know, they're tiny, 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 and the sporangia, the parts and bits of it, also fall off with the sori, I guess. No, there's a sori, the complete, I don't remember. But you got to really polish up on your fern reproduction. It's kind of it's fun to read about. I'd really like to do it sometimes. But anyway, next. And here are some resources that you can look at later. Hopefully the links seem like they work on it. So, and that's it.
Very good. Some of these are also on the TNPS website in the
Okay.
resources tab. So if you want to look out there, you can see some of those. And we'll take a look at this, compare the two lists, and possibly copy some of these over to the resources area.
Yeah, there's also on here, I think there is a YouTube video that it's the second one from the bottom going up, Absolutely Ohlsson, which has a YouTube video of that weedy geranium seed planting itself, how that works in a corkscrew. So that's kind of cool to look at.
Neat stuff.
For a rainy day.
Well, this has been fascinating. We've been given so much information, it'll take quite a long time for us
to digest
that.
Yeah, maybe too much. And there is the next slide also after this has just got some books that are just really interesting, written by a guy. I don't know if it'll come up or not, but there is it's in this. I can't, whatever his name is, William Kalina. He's from the New England Wildflower Society, and that first book is Growing and Propagating Wildflowers, where he talks about seed treatment and different natives and how to handle them as far as propagating from seeds or cuttings.
So we did get several items in the chat. And Valentine says, thank you for sharing so much great information. And also, small jury nibs are good. I'm not sure what that was referring to, but she did make that comment.
Okay.
So were most of these collected over in the Tullahoma area?
Yes. And actually some of them I collected in Texas and brought with me. Okay. And in fact, that the columbine, the red columbine, I had collected from a large population, some seed in Marshall County, probably, gosh, about 25 years ago, and it has gone with me to different places where I lived, and is actually back in Tennessee. Yeah, so it's interesting. It's kind of hard to leave plants that become your, especially native plants that become your old friends. You know, you got to kind of take them with you like family.
Well, I'm sure this information is going to make a lot of people excited about going out this fall and taking
Oh,
a look for these seed heads and collecting and giving it a try. So thank you
okay.
so very much for all this and putting this
Absolutely.
together. And I think we made it through it.
I think we did too. I don't hear any more thunder. So I hope everybody stays safe this evening and escapes the bad weather.
Well, you've done a great job of finishing up right on time. So unless there are other questions, I'm going to I'll go ahead and end this session. But thank you so much again, and
Absolutely.
please stay in touch with TNPS.
Yes, I need to get in on some stuff with you guys. It's been a long time.
Sounds great.
Thank you,
Well, good
Mitchell.
night, everyone.
Good night.